COOGS house. The Houston Cougars knock off the Kansas State Wildcats 9-2 in a big upset to open the Big 12 tournament, and they didn't even have to use their secret weapon to do it.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs. I'm not sure if that played or not. The internet's kind of wonky here. I'm host of Locked On Cougs, Parker Ainsworth, and Houston knocks off Kansas State 9-2 in a big-time upset to open Big 12 tournament play. If you're in here and live and you want to talk to us about the game, tell us in the comments down below where you watched the game from. Were you in Arlington? Were you on the couch or at your buddy's house? Where were you watching? This one was on ESPN2. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Look, I want to get into the game some in the first part as a whole, just kind of big picture things from this one, takeaways I've got. They play again tomorrow night. We'll get into that later. I also want to spend some time talking about Antoine Jean and kind of what that means looking forward in, frankly, this tournament and how they got away without having to use him on Wednesday night. This was a late first pitch. It was I think first pitch was like 8:15 local time, which feels bonkers, but also just the way it is. I guess you play all of your games in the ballpark at Arlington there. Globe Life is what they call it there. And listen, Houston had been, I think, interestingly enough, 7-3 in Game 1 of Big 12 series. That is in large part, I think, because they could use Antoine Jean in those kind of games to open up series. They had some strength in their first outing against teams typically. Somewhat ironically, one of those 3 losses was against Kansas State earlier this season. And so there's a little bit of like, well, how's this game going to go? Kansas State is very comfortably feeling their way, like they're going to be in the NCAA tournament after this is all over. So there might have been some of that ease on their behalf as well. And honestly, Houston gave up 2 runs in the first inning, and it felt kind of like things might spiral. Did not feel like a very good start. Quick response, opened the second inning, the top of the second inning, with their own 2 runs. And from then on, it kind of just felt like everything was going to go Houston's way. Handful of Kansas State errors. Let's not be dishonest here. Balls popping up off of hands and gloves and kind of taking funny bounces for the Kansas State Wildcats at times there. But I don't want to take anything away from that. Like, Houston got a bunch of solid contact in this game, really beat up Kansas State's pitching staff throughout it. They scored a couple runs in the top of the second to tie it up, and they got the starter out in just 1 2/3 innings pitched and really put Kansas State in a bind. Perez looked like, I guess initially, Andres Perez gets the win, and like the bottom of the 4th inning, there was a moment where it felt like he might be getting close to being beaten up himself and might need to come out of the game. Antoine Jean is warming up his arm. It felt very much like a traditional first game. He managed to get out of that 4th inning unscathed. Then you get to the top of the 5th inning, and Xavier Perez hits an RBI triple that really feels like a dagger. It puts him on third base. There's no outs left in the inning. And at that moment, it's like, oh, this is about to burst open. Now, Perez did not end up actually scoring from there because of the way the rest of the inning went, but it really felt like that was like the moment where Kansas State was like, oh crap, this might just not be our day. There's other moments too, like Malachi Lott catches a deep fly ball in the outfield that felt like it was at least an extra base hit. Initially, when I heard the crack of the bat, I thought it was a dinger. Great to see it not become that, obviously. But that's the way that goes sometimes if you're Houston in this one. They went to David Stitch at the bottom of the 6th, and I had the audio on, the play-by-play, the ESPN2 commentary. And they were like, what is Houston doing? Like, are they going to go to Antoine Jean or not? They kind of almost like as if Houston was getting cutesy in this, not using Big 12 Pitcher of the Year Antoine Jean there. But he got out of the inning with runners in runners in scoring position didn't matter. And then they open up the 7th after the bottom of that 6th inning with David Stitch. Open up the 7th with back-to-back extra base hits, 2 pitches, and they scored a run by like 7 pitches in the inning. They had a couple more runs in. It was really another big inning for Houston there. Get the bottom of 7th, Fuller goes 1, 2, 3, and that really felt like all she wrote. And Houston with a big, dominant performance. Got a couple commenters here as we're live here. We don't usually go live after baseball games. We still here? We don't typically go live after postseason games. And I did want to throw in some comments here. Coog Sauce, one of my baseball fan favorite guys over on the social media platforms, points out that if we'd had Connor McGinnis all conference games, might have had a much different season going into the tournament. McGinnis was 3 of 5 in this game. Couple extra base hits as well, if I'm not mistaken here. Initially, that's my first remember. And as Cook Sauce here points out, like he was a big part of the offense in this one. And that's really, really important when you factor in like the big thing about this game was not having to use relief pitcher Antoine Jean, who's pitcher of the year in the conference, because you save him theoretically for a Thursday night quarterfinal matchup with TCU, which feels kind of like the home team being at the DFW school. You're playing in Globe Life Park. And I really, really like the offense being able to put up 9 runs in that kind of fashion. The other thing, too, was it was 9 runs, but it wasn't like, they got out when they played in the desert and the ball kind of carried in the heat or whatever. They were solid contact, popped in the right spots on the field, finding the gaps and stuff like that. It was not super cutesy or anything of that nature. Now, Kansas State, I mentioned, or did make some errors in the field. And so of the 9 runs, I guess Houston scored technically 5 of them were earned. And I guess that speaks to the kind of night Kansas State had as well, 4 unearned runs. But to be fair, the 5 earned runs also would have won this game, right? So I don't know that it made that big of a difference, but it certainly made some sort of a difference. We're here live reacting to Houston's big win, 9-2 over Kansas State. And I want to talk some about the other big thing that happened for Houston Cougar baseball this week, and that is Antoine Jean getting his name recognized. But before we get too far into that, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, American #1 Sportsbook, because the NBA playoffs are in full swing. Full disclosure, I had 2 screens going. One of them was the NBA playoffs. What a night in Madison Square Garden that was. Every night delivers and big performances. Halliburton with a end of game buzzer beating kind of plays. Can't miss moments happen in the NBA playoffs, and you can make the most of that with FanDuel. It's the best way to stay in the game before tip off and live. Player props, performance trends, in game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to get in smart and win big. Now, I love the quick payouts, easy functional app. $200 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If that bet hits, you get $200 back in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Parker Ainsworth locked on Cougs here. I'm talking about Houston's win over Kansas State in the opening round of the Big 12 tournament. One thing Cook Sauce chimes in here that I did not say myself, and Cook Sauce is going back and forth. It's like we're having a conversation. But he did love how aggressive they were in the base paths as well. Houston did. I think at one point they had like a double steal. They had like one guy stole second and then third, like right after that. Make sure I got my numbers right here. Houston had 5 stolen bases on the night. Really, really impressive out. Again, aggressive offense, putting the bat on the ball and being aggressive with the bats. But the story of the week, I guess, earlier in the week was actually the arms. And Antoine Jean, he earned Big 12 Pitcher of the Year, is the first reliever to win Big 12's Pitcher of the Year, and it's Houston's first conference Pitcher of the Year in any conference they've been in since 2018. I don't guess so. Obviously, if you watch Houston Cougar baseball, and admittedly, there are people I'm sure that feel much more dedicated to that than I am. I'm kind of known as a basketball guy and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think anyone's watched this team has any doubt that he was the most important pitcher in baseball. He did come into a relief role in his time at Houston. They mentioned in the telecast night about starting his career off as a lefty at Alabama from Canada, and kind of how that starting role was what he thought he was going to be, and then he's kind of developed into this completely other thing where he kind of comes in and shuts down the game in the middle as a reliever. But when you look at Houston's records with him in and out of games when he can and cannot pitch, it makes total sense, obviously, as to why he's the most important. Then statistically, 162 opponent batting average, fastball gets up as high as 95 miles per hour. That 162, I should point out, opponent batting average is best in the Big 12 for any pitcher within a certain criteria of amount of pitches, minimum amount of pitches thrown. Third in the conference strikeouts. He's really had a tremendous year. He's just not a traditional starter, even if he plays as important a role at Houston as a traditional starter. 3 wins in Big 12 play. He did get credit with three wins this season. He's just the second relief pitcher in school history with over 100 strikeouts. And it sounds like, this move to the bullpen, the story's going to come out more and more. Houston wins this postseason if they keep winning. But he and pitching coach Williams had a conversation after he went undrafted in last year's MLB draft about what to do. And this is really more of a move of hey, this might be a better move for your career long term. And now it's benefiting Houston in the short term, right? They mechanically fixed some things too. I don't mean to say that there's none of that would be done. That'd be done every offseason for a pitcher. But Woody Williams called it more of a promotion and really focused on that. Pitching coach Woody Williams did with him, and it clearly paid off in a big kind of way as far as individual accolades go. And it's got Houston in the Big 12 tournament where they were not a year ago. It's got Houston winning the first round game of that tournament. Admittedly, they don't even need him to win that, but it frankly kind of shapes how his performance, I should say, will shape how Houston's quarterfinal will go against TCU. Because I think most people would have assumed that to win the opening round game on Wednesday night with him, they would have to beat Kansas State, they would have needed him on the bump, right? At some point in the night, he'd have had to go out mid-inning or to open an inning or something like that, right? I think they typically bring him in at mid-inning, but either way, right? And that they got out of the night without him, and they had this gigantic cushion for most of the night, so they did not even need to dabble with it very often. They warmed him up. It looked like he stood up and started moving his arm around a couple times, but didn't even need to entertain it very seriously, right? Suddenly, Houston goes into the quarterfinal game looking like the team that has this pitcher with a 102 ERA and 162 opponent batting average that can go out there and get you 4 innings against TCU. Right. And especially in a win or go home kind of matchup for Houston, because Houston needs to win these games to get to the postseason, to get to the NCAA tournament. Right. They can't, they're not where Kansas State is or TCU is, where these games are more about their seeding for those two teams. Right. Houston has to win these just to get to the Dan and the tournament and regionals. And ultimately you hope to get to Omaha and all that kind of stuff. Right. But I feel like that edge kind of helped Houston on Wednesday, and then when you add that edge and Antoine on Thursday, it's going to be interesting to see. The other thing I think about this game as we're reacting to it is full transparency. I think a lot of people have been upset with or they've been complacent, or the coaching and the lack of movement forward of the program the last few years has had people feeling not so great about baseball, right? And bluntly, as you watch these shows, I can tell you right now, not a whole lot of people are tuning in to watch Houston Cougar baseball talk all that often. It indicates like a lack of interest, a lack of enthusiasm around the baseball program, right? And there have been days where Houston Cougar baseball is really good, and it doesn't feel like we're in those days. And to see this kind of an outing, this kind of storytelling around one of the pitchers, to see these kinds of things happening certainly feels like it could be the start of revitalizing something. Now, in the big picture, I've been on the record, and I'll say it again, making the Big 12 tournament felt like enough of a step forward to retain Todd Whitting for next season. It really feels like winning the first game of that tournament, in a game you were not supposed to win, would help secure his next season. Beating TCU, again, functionally a home team, in the quarterfinal on Thursday would really go a long way in doing that as well, right? And so Thursday night, Houston plays TCU, 7:30 local time in Arlington. I can imagine you see Antoine Jean in that one. As good as TCU is, I don't think they're going to be able to put up the 9-2 kind of outing. I do think, though, that having a healthier lineup will be important in this one. Connor McGinnis being back obviously played a big role in Wednesday's game. Having that bat back in the lineup, batting in that third spot. Trey Broussard's been hot for about 2 or 3 weeks now. Having him open up at the top of the order. And frankly, if you can get Xavier Perez back, I mentioned that Broussard's been hot last 2 weeks. It felt like about a month ago, like this was Xavier Perez's season. Like it was like he was having a hot year. If you can kind of get him back into more of that rhythm, suddenly you have McGinnis there too. That top four is pretty tough. And it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of keep that rolling on Thursday night. We'll be at least talking about it for Thursday night into Friday. First pitch is 7:30, which probably means we'll get to talk about it after. This one ended kind of late, but I felt like I owed you some talk after technical difficulties first. I guess also got interrupted this in the start and derailed a little bit of Wednesday morning's operation. But we'll be here talking all those kinds of things after the TCU game. Also got basketball stuff going on, a Big 12 squad coming up on Thursday afternoon as well. All things happening all the time here at Locked on Cougs. So subscribe and hit the bell so you know we're live. Locked on Cougs is a prime member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day, even late at night after a big win over Kansas State. Go Cougs.